What do you think of when you hear the words mental health first aid? Do you know what it is? Do you know why it's important? I've invited my very first in-studio guest to talk all about it. Hence why I am recording in the very echoey boardroom today instead of my usual little comfy gray couch. Mental health first aid is something that has become of increasing importance, especially in a year like the one we've been having. So stay tuned and check out the conversation. Hi, I'm Leslie and I am a life coach based here in Brisbane, Australia. And I am here today with
Sharon Orapelang.
Yeah, we're going to talk about mental health first aid. Now, the reason I wanted to have this discussion with you, Sharon, is because after the course that I did with you, I did a course with her.
Yeah.
When was it? About 2 weeks ago now?
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. It was, how would you describe the course itself? Like, what was the course?
So, mental health first aid, I always say, when I try to describe it to people, to say it is just like physical first aid, but first aid for the mind, for our well-being, for our mental health. It is really about giving us the skills and the knowledge about the impact of mental health and what to do when we recognize those signs and symptoms that things are not going okay for ourselves or the people we love or our colleagues, and give us a real action plan. What is it that we can do to provide that support when that happens? We know that mental health and mental health issues and concerns are so very common. They impact all of us. In Australia, we know it's about 1 in 5 Australians would experience a mental health condition. So we know it's common. But we also know that, especially this year, 2020, with COVID-19 and people's experiences, being away from family, people having to deal with the loss of jobs, loss of actual family members, people they love, the change in our environment, things that we used to do we're no longer doing. That has really created a huge struggle for a lot of people. So mental health first aid comes in there where, people learn those skills of, what is it that they can do to support someone who's experiencing a struggle, a mental struggle, and what support system is there out there. Normally we don't know.
Yeah.
Where do I go? What do I look for? What is mental health?
Yeah, that was one of the most helpful things that I found in the course, was knowing exactly where to direct people to in particular circumstances. And this is a field that Sharon has been working in for a very long time, correct?
Yes, a
Can
very
you tell
long
us
time.
about that?
I've been doing mental health first aid for 10 years now. I do first aid for workplaces and for the community. So I've been accredited as an instructor for about 10 years, but I've been in the field of mental health for almost 15 years now. I have my studies in psychology and my master's in behavioral management. So mental health has been really something that I am passionate about. I work in the mental health system and policy. So being able to look at mental health in a very holistic way, from prevention, early intervention, to working with this system around policy and planning for mental health services, for me seems to be a ground that puts everything together for myself. So passionate about mental health, and sometimes whenever I think back as to where that passion comes from, I think of my mother. My mother was a psychiatric nurse, as they call them back in Botswana, but a mental health nurse, and she was also a lecturer in mental health. And
So you said this was in Botswana?
in Botswana is
Okay.
where I come from. It's in the southern part of Africa. So perhaps, you know, what she used to do was what inspired me to get into it, even without recognizing that that was what it was. You know, when the people you love and they're doing something, you know, you sometimes become what you see. And I think that experience, that mum being who she was, she's passed on now, but being who she was and the support that she was providing, I get to see sometimes her students have come to me and saying, your mother was my lecturer, and you know, and she was such a humble person, and she does this, she was helping people. You know, mental health, if you work in this system, and it's about helping, you know. So I think seeing mum being the person who she is and helping others has really influenced me in getting into mental health, but also my own journey. I've struggled with mental health issues. Perhaps when I was young, I wasn't calling them mental health issues because I didn't know anything better. But as I was, you know, growing up and really knowing what I'm talking about, and really knowing what the words to describe what I'm experiencing, that's when I realized that, mental health issues were some of my struggles, and I was able to get help. I know the impact that getting help can have on an individual who's struggling. That is why I'm passionate about mental health first aid, because I think when you are able to articulate and describe the people's experiences of mental health, then you are able to know what it is that you are actually experiencing, because you have words, right? You've done linguistics.
Yeah.
You know what words, the impact of words, and knowing how to describe things.
Yeah.
So in the communities
You're veering off camera a little bit.
in the communities that I often, or the community that I come from, you know, you find that people don't talk about mental health issues.
Yeah.
And it's a stigma that's there.
Yeah.
And I know it's not only people of color who struggles with this. We know that in the general community, there's still a huge stigma as well around mental health issues.
Yeah. And you touched on something really important there with the language, having the language. Being able to speak someone else's language or understand and process the words, the nonverbal and verbal communication they're using to then reflect things back to them is crucial.
It is crucial, because you also, the language is about not just, you know, that verbal and non-verbal. It's actually it's the hearing, isn't it? It's the hearing people's stories without judgment.
Yeah.
You know, when someone is telling you that they're struggling, or you recognize that they're struggling, and you can have the words to say, you know, I've been seeing that this has been happening for you. I'm a little bit concerned. Is everything okay with you? How are you traveling? How are you doing? And then opening that door to say, it is safe here for you to say what it is that you need to say to me.
Yeah.
And I'll hold this space for you while you do that. That's what mental health first aid, when we do the training, we're trying to get people to have that skill, to provide that safe ground, to have people, you know, share whatever it is that they're carrying with them emotionally.
Yeah. Keeping people safe is, well, the minute you said that, it took me back to an experience that I had back in, this would have been 2012, I think, when I had a mental health emergency. And this was at work. And it was something related to the relationship I was in at the time. And I was just not in a good headspace at all. And it was another work colleague who I later came to learn had been trained in mental health first aid. She recognized that, well, the first thing she did was take me into a different room. She's like, let's go into the bathroom. And, you know, it was like she took on this demeanor that was just so strong and caring at the same time. No judgment or anything. And she just knew how to keep me safe, how to not escalate my mood in some way. Whereas there had been other situations I'd been in, where the response from the other person is kind of like, what's wrong with you? What do you have to be upset about? And blah, blah, blah. I think it's a little bit like the common mistakes that people make when they are administering physical first aid.
Yeah.
There are mistakes that people make, common mistakes in mental health first aid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of those mistakes is where people think, oh, come on, there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, it's not a good thing to say.
You know, so that literally minimizes whatever experience you're experiencing.
Yeah. It's like, let me invalidate your feelings completely.
Completely. That doesn't matter because you've nothing. Or even people saying to you, you know, you're stronger than that.
You're a strong black woman.
You are a strong black woman, you can do it. Now, other people might see that as, oh, you're trying to encourage the person and being positive. But if I'm struggling, and you know the strongest thing that I'm going through right now is keeping me alive, and you're telling me that because I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing, that somehow that strength is kind of diminishing, you know, that it becomes so hard. The person just switches off completely. Because then they start to tell themselves, yes, I am strong, I can do this, and not go and get the help that they need.
Yeah.
We know that you're a life coach. You know that when people come and speak to you, it is really like taking off the rocks that been carrying to make that load a little lighter.
Yeah.
And when the load is a little lighter, then you are able to start putting things in place to ensure that when you face that obstacle again or that barrier, you have strategies in place.
Yes. It's a little bit like taking inventory of their situation, of their context, saying, okay, let's remove these things from the mental load you've been carrying. Now, what do we want to reintroduce?
Absolutely.
And in what form do we want to reintroduce these things? Like, which of these experiences and feelings and thoughts are going to help you rise to whatever it is you need to rise to? Yeah.
And it is really important to ensure that we support people to get there. We normalize the experience that life is never just all happy, because it's not like that.
Yeah.
That we do experience the ups and downs, and that's okay. But if those ups and downs starts to really impact on ourselves, impact on our relationships, our families, if I'm starting to feel, start to cry out of, I would say no reason, but there is always a reason. But I start to cry a lot, or I start to feel so sad, for a long time. It's just not going away. The enjoyment of life is not there. I disengage from my friends, my family, my activities. I start to find excuses not to go to work because I'm just feeling so tired, and I feel like I don't want to be around people. I start to probably start eating a lot, or I can't even eat. Life is start to become hard, and it start to impact on myself and the people around me. Then that's the point where I recognize that I need help, and then that help is available. So we need to continue having the conversation about what does mental health concerns look like? what do people experience, and that normalize that. It's okay because life happens.
Yeah.
And then how, when that starts to impact on you, where do you go?
Yes. Where do you go?
Where do you go? And we live here in Australia, and people say sometimes that there's nothing for free. So whenever somebody is struggling, they think of mental health, and they're like, oh my God, I need lots of money and I have to get some help, or I need to go to see a life coach, it's going to cost me a lot of money. And so people are often worried about not just obviously what the stigma about what people would say, or maybe someone that they talk to is going to think, oh no, you don't have anything to worry about. Or they're often also worried about how much will this cost me as well.
Yeah, and that's such a valid concern as well. Like, one issue that I have had in the past with pursuing any sort of mental health treatment is, how much is it going to cost me? Because at the time I was going through severe financial anxieties as well. I wasn't having financial problems, but it was also part of the emotionally abusive relationship that I was in years ago. There was a lot of like financial manipulation that caused a lot of anxiety for me. So when I would go to see a therapist, and somewhere in the back of my head I'm thinking, okay, am I getting my money's worth? Am I getting my money's worth? Am I getting my money's worth?
How long will this take? When will I feel better?
Yeah,
you're starting to put some timelines on it.
And you know what? That's also one of the reasons that when I see a new coaching client for the first time, I do the first session for free. So it's my free consultation, because it's kind of considered a bit of a no-no in some circles these days. But it's because I want that first meeting to just be about the conversation, not whatever other thoughts are creeping in, saying like, oh, what is going on? Am I getting my money's worth? Is this person trying to rip me off? Because I remember once going to a psychologist because I was like, I need someone to diagnose me with ADHD. That's the only thing that would make sense for my behaviors, and that was my thinking at the time. And the guy, long story short, it's kind of like, don't think that's it. Go work on this other thing first. Can't really help you. Now pay me $280. And it's like, okay. Yeah.
And people experience that, and because we come into therapy sessions with expectations.
Yeah.
And often, we talk about people getting help. People know what to expect when they go to a doctor. We know doctors are not therapists. They don't do. They're doctors, they're medical doctors, and they look at they will support you and refer you to, if you have mental health concerns. They will then refer you to someone who's trained in that, which is a counselor or a psychologist. And whenever people go to a psychologist, and especially if you haven't been before to a psychologist, often people have no idea what to expect. So you come in with your own expectations, your own whatever it is, judgments, whatever it is that you carry because of what you have experienced in the past, or who you've seen in the past, or what others have said in the past. So when you come in with all those expectations, especially in the first session, which often it takes for that first session for the person to decide whether they're coming back again.
Yep.
And so that first session is so critical.
Yep.
So critical. Because I've seen many people coming in with their expectations and everything they bring in, and that first session did not meet whatever their expectations are, and they've never come back again. And unfortunately, they disengage from therapy ever again because they have one bad experience. And I really like to encourage people to say, and this is not about doctor shopping or therapy shopping, that if somebody you are not from the first session and not engaging well with, you try again on the second session. Okay. And of course, if there is definitely no rapport there. We know rapport is absolutely critical for you to be able to work through whatever it is that you're experiencing. So if you don't get that, then it's okay to go back to your doctor and say, I did not get that. Is there anybody else that you can recommend that I go and see? Rather than completely disengaging because you think, I'm beyond help. I've heard people saying to me, after I've recommended that they go to see the doctor, and the doctor does get you into a mental health plan, and you under Medicare you are able to access a psychologist having, it used to be 10 sessions, now they've been increased recently to 20 sessions under the Medicare, covered by Medicare. So you can do that under a mental health plan. So it is very important that when you do that, just like if it was for a physical illness, and your doctor recommends you somewhere and you don't think that you got what you needed, you would be going back to your doctor and saying, this has been my experience and I'm not okay with it. Is there anybody else that you can recommend for me? So normalize the going back to your doctor and sharing with your doctor about your experience in getting support for your mental health, just like anything else. Your doctor is a coordinating point for your health. Okay, so your doctor is a coordinating point for your physical health and your mental health. They are the ones that would kind of the hub for you. It is important when we tell people to go and see that GP to recognize that that's the reason why we want them to go through that GP in order to be able to go to, because they can go directly and that's okay, but there is some costs associated with that if the cost is something that they're worried about. But I also want us to talk about how we can learn skills to help us to keep ourselves mentally healthy. It's not just about we get unwell and we see someone. But how do we then recognize that we're starting to get a little bit unwell and have strategies so that we don't actually get unwell? You know what I mean? We know that people for physical health can go to the gym. I know going to the gym doesn't mean that I'll never get a heart attack, or doesn't mean that I'll never get this illness, but it means that it improves my chances of staying well.
Giving yourself that fighting chance is so incredibly important. That relationship building process with a mental health care provider is so important. And that referral process, as you were saying, by a GP or whoever, is really important as well. And I know that one of the reasons I chose to take the course, it's something that I had been wanting to do for a long time, was because in my life coaching practice, there's always that potential for someone to come to me with a mental health emergency that they don't necessarily recognize as a mental health emergency. Now, the work that I do isn't a mental health service. I wanted to make sure that I understood the best protocols to follow with the Australian system, with Brisbane, to handle that situation in the best way possible, following some sort of an official, evidence-based, peer-reviewed protocol.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope you got that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, it's something that I know I'm going to be revisiting over and over again. I've got
course.
the book in my office, and that's something that I came out of the course after the last day feeling a lot more confident about.
I'm glad, because it is something that, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's 10 years that I've been doing this course, and every single time, and what keeps me going is knowing that the people who've been through the course will go out there back to their lives, their workplaces, and they will make a change. They will make a change. They will talk about mental health differently. They would understand issues that are relating to mental health concerns, the impact of that on the people who are experiencing it. And then they will also help people go and get the help that they need, the professional help that they need. it's just understanding this in a way different than what often people understand this topic.
Yeah.
It's really about breaking down this topic that nobody wants to talk about
Yeah.
to something that becomes part of who you are
Yeah.
as people. It's humanity.
Yeah.
We just need to be able to help each other.
Yeah. And prior to taking the course and becoming accredited and everything, my normal referral process for someone who came to me with an issue that wasn't appropriate for coaching looked very different. Because sometimes when people come to me, there have been times in the past where, it's like, well, this is more something for a counselor.
Yeah.
Or this is something that you might want to consider a more ongoing relationship with a therapist for. And then the discussion would continue from there. They weren't emergency situations, but it was communicating that potential mismatch in services.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, it happens in reverse too, where someone will come to me and having gone through counseling and therapy for years and years and years, and then that one session, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, that's it.
this is what I need. It's like, it's because it's that mismatch of services that
Yeah.
people aren't necessarily aware of.
Yeah.
That's actually the topic of my very first YouTube video was the difference between coaching and counseling. But having that extra support of mental health first aid is also just sensible
It is.
in my industry. It just makes sense.
I never understood how people could just, people have physical first aid. Some people don't. If ever I know that something can save a life, I will go and do it because I want to give either myself or the people around me the best chance in life.
Yeah.
know.
And with some industries that require that
Yeah,
to even work,
absolutely.
like what would that include? Like people working in gyms need to have first aid certification, right? Teachers.
Yeah.
There are a number of industries that have that as a basic requirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So mental health first aid should be a basic requirement in a lot of industries.
Absolutely.
And it's just, are there any where it is a basic requirement?
It's not a mandatory
Okay.
requirement, and there's no industry at the moment that it is. But it is. I know, and it really should be.
It really should.
I mean, it really should be, and and it comes from the top. It's really about. I think it's a reflection of the society where mental health conversations are not talked about, are not happening. So then you can imagine in the workplaces that to actually bring that change, to make it a mandatory requirement for people to be trained in mental health first aid, it requires leaders who recognize the importance of that.
Yeah.
So once we get people's the conversations happening on the ground in the community, in each of our industries, then hopefully that will start to translate to making these things happen, because it's just really it's a base. It should be a basic requirement.
Yeah.
Because people don't leave their mental health at home when they come to the workplace.
No.
You bring the whole of you to wherever you are at, and you want to be able to also for the workplaces to know things that can cause mental harm.
Yes.
Okay, about workplace, because then they understand what the impact of mental health issues look like.
Yeah.
Then you are more likely to create a safe workplace,
Yeah.
free from mental health harm.
That is one of the reasons I quit my last job, because there just was not nearly enough, if any, focus on staff mental health best practices. There were things on paper that could be accessed, but there was not enough of a workplace cultural understanding of the do's and don'ts of making sure that people weren't put into positions where they were going to have a mental health emergency with no backup plan. I was put in one of those positions, and it was
no supervision, no debriefing, this is what happened when you don't when there is no leadership from the top around creating a mentally safe workplace.
Yeah.
It requires a recognition of the impact of mental health conditions, the impact that some tasks can have on people who are experiencing it, and also putting things to mitigate that. Because when you do that, your staff are not going to stay home because they're unwell. They will thrive in the workplace because they're getting the support. You won't have the issues of having to recruit every single time because people have become overwhelmed and have left their work.
Yeah.
And also, you will have people showing up every day because they feel safe and supported, and they'd rather be there than be anywhere else.
Yeah.
So imagine when you have all those combination of things happening in your workplace, you are going to thrive.
Yeah.
Your teams thrive.
Yeah.
So fundamental, basic fundamental human rights, call it whatever it is, but mentally healthy workplaces is a must.
Yeah.
And an absolute must. And there are strategies that people can employ. And really, for me, it starts with literacy.
Yeah.
It starts with, building up our literacy of what mental health issues are and the impact of them, and then what to do. And then we put strategies in place. We co-design strategies with your colleagues, with your teams, with people. So it's just, you're not bringing things from the top, but you are getting everybody involved.
Yeah.
Because everybody has to own this, right?
Yeah. That co-strategizing of people on that parallel level is so critically important. Yeah. Having been in situations in the past where, things would just come from the top down, where things on paper was like, oh, well, if you're dealing with this issue, you can access, EAP or this and that. It's like, that's all well and good, but what are you doing to not drive us to that point?
Yes.
It's like, I don't know.
Do we recognize the impact of bullying in the workplace? Do we recognize the impact of this? And if somebody says, what are you doing with that? How
do we recognize what bullying in the workplace actually looks like? It's not someone going to a colleague and tugging on their hair.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there a lot of workplaces are all well-meaning and saying, okay, making sure that we have our employee assistance program, you go and access it if you need, you do that. But if an employee who feels that they're already overwhelmed and they're already not coping, and thinking that by taking that 1 hour to go and speak to someone on the phone, employee assistance program, that somebody's going to come and says, where were you?
Yeah.
Do you think that they would access that? So you even just with the employee assistance program, it has to be encouraged that you can use this within your work time.
And with employee assistance programs, having more open conversations about that with staff as a whole, rather than just that one person whose mental health situation is causing you a problem, business-wise. It's like, no. Like, if everyone understands how it works, that's also that provides more points of contact for. Oh well, I was about to make it seem more complicated than it is, but it's like having more of an army of people who can recognize when a colleague has a problem and they have the language to to encourage that colleague to access employee assistance programs.
Absolutely.
Because everyone knows how it works.
Absolutely. That's it.
Yeah.
See, that is why we do mental health first aid for the workplace, because then you start with that basic information, knowledge, the literacy part. Where build is not just one person. This is not a responsibility of one person in the workplace. It's all our responsibility. So when we start and having that basic language of what it is that we understand as mental health issues and concerns, and then we will all of us have that responsibility to recognize and support and link people to support, and because we all understand, we know. So when I get workplaces sometimes just sending one person from the workplace to come and do mental health first aid with me, they go back and they just become the only person in the workplace. So when they're struggling themselves, nobody else is able to recognize and support them because they are the mental health first aid person. No, it's not about having one person. It's actually ensuring that every single one in your workplace have the knowledge and skills to be able to support their peers.
Yeah, because you wouldn't do that with physical first aid, would you? It's like, oh, he's choking. He can handle it. He's a first aider. It's like, no.
We want to make sure that
anybody get this thing out of my throat because it's not just on me.
That's exactly right. But it's incredible. It's really incredible, and we're pushing to ensure that this becomes a really basic requirement for workplaces to ensure they have, even with mental health first aid has an incentive program where we recognize the staff, depending on how many staff you've trained in mental health first aid, we give you a rating. It can become gold, you can become that. So and that's just an incentive for workplaces to recognize that it does not require just one person in the workplace being trained as mental health first aider. It requires really all of us. In my family, it's not just me who required to become a mental health first aider in my family. I want everyone. When my son is enough to do the training, he's 11 now, but when he's 18, he will do mental health first aid. And I will make sure that he has the skills to do that. In the meantime, we are having the conversations about mental health. We are having the conversation about where to get help, so he can support his friends. We are having those safe conversations that are appropriate for that age around if you're feeling sad and then you're feeling sad for a long time, you can come and talk to mom, or you can come and talk to your teacher. This is what it looks like. It's giving whatever we're feeling, the language to describe what it is.
Yeah. In some way, and that is so important, and that's one way that it feels like the youth of today are benefiting in ways that maybe our generation didn't at their age, because of the openness to those conversations, because teenagers and children do have more of that awareness of life isn't all just about me.
And I think that's why we're seeing, especially this year, we're seeing an increase of access to support services by younger people. And sometimes it scares me, and like, why young people are so unwell and experiencing so many issues. But on the flip side of it is that I'm actually quite encouraged that they are seeking help. So we're seeing an increased rates of hits, and Beyond Blue has reported increased rates of hits, and a lot about due to COVID. That normalization of getting help and professional help, I think, is so critical. And when we see our young people reaching out, I'm hoping that in the future we'll see that decrease in mental distress when they're older, because then by reaching out early, they are able to build the skills they need to be able, strategies they need to be able to navigate whatever it is that they will continue to experience as life progresses. So that help-seeking behavior that we're seeing, rather than it being alarming, I look at it positively, that at least they're reaching out for help.
Yes.
And I would love to see that translate into all our communities. But also, of course, our mental health system has to be able to cope with that. And there's been a lot of investment, both state and federally, in mental health, and I'm hoping that will continue to ensure that services are there for people. And not just services are there for people, but appropriate services, culturally safe services are there for people to access. So we need a lot of people of color, who are life coaches, who are counselors, who are psychologists. And I'm hoping as our young people starting to embrace the help seeking, that will also spark the idea that, okay, I can actually become a psychologist, because then they see and they can get the benefits of what that person actually do.
Yeah.
You know, so then we will start to see the increase in them taking up. You know, we know young people when they go to a doctor and they're young and they want to become a doctor because they've seen a doctor. Okay, if a young person have gone and seen a psychologist, and that inspires them to get into the field of psychology. Anyways, that, you know, we'll start to see that diversity coming in later on.
And that diversity is so important. One of the things, and we'll probably wrap up with this, one of the things that I found so beneficial of taking the mental health first aid course with you was the global perspective that you brought into it. Relating certain mental health related behaviors in what Australians might recognize in their day-to-day compared to what people from Africa and from other areas that you have encountered through your lived experience. You know, like, that's something that you can't get from someone who's sort of never left Australia ever. And that's something that I bring into my coaching as well. And I think that's one thing that is, so valuable. Having a diversity of experiences.
Absolutely.
Because the people on the ground.
The strength.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much strength in that.
When we talk about cultural diversity being a strength, when you see it in practice, and you get that global experience and that global perspective, the different perspective. You know, and I often think, often in my public training, I'll get incredible people from everywhere. And over the years, I've been able to see how, and you know, be able to support people, how we can do this in a way that is so appropriate to whoever it is that you are.
Yes.
Where you are from, what your belief system looks like, what your
customization.
You're able to then take that and create whatever it is that you want, because you're out there living your life and providing that support to the people around you. So you have to be able to do it in a way that you're comfortable, and you have an experience of, okay, I can actually customize it to what I feel. And my own community, to my own people, and I think that is quite valuable. So, thank you. I'm so glad that you've come to my course, and I'm so glad that you know, you will use that experience to support the people that you see through your practice and the community as well. I know you're very involved in a lot of community advocacy and activism as well, and you know, that is such a valuable skill to have when you're out there and helping others, but also helping yourself as well and the people close to you. That's the more important.
Yeah, and after the course, I tell you what, like, for the next 2 days, I was like, no one bother me. Self-care for Leslie.
Exactly right. Absolutely. And hey, we need to do more of self-care.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was so excited, like, because, as I said earlier in the conversation, I had been wanting to do an accreditation program, but then, because I already knew you, when I found out that you were a trainer, I was like, now is the time. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
That's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Finish up.
That way. She's just wheeling away from me now. Yes. Sharon is a wonderful person who I am very honored to know. And I guess just thank you. And I feel like this is the beginning of a much larger an ongoing conversation. So
Absolutely.
I look forward to more discussions about this.
Yeah. Yes. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye. See, now she can wheel away. I am so grateful that Sharon came out to Tenerife to talk to us about mental health first aid. She is very knowledgeable on this subject. She's very passionate about it. She has a lot of experience in mental health policy in Australia and globally, and it really is an honor to have that level of knowledge on the topic in this context. What I want to know is which topics from our conversation we should expand on, because we are going to talk more about this in future videos. So leave me a comment or message me and let me know what you would like us to go into more detail about. We've got some ideas already, but always open to outside input. All right, thanks. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and share it with someone else who can benefit from it. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell so you know exactly when I've uploaded a new video. You can also book a free life coaching session with me through my website, leslievcoaching.com, and we can work together online or right here in my studio. Follow me on my socials to keep up with what I'm doing, and please get in touch with any questions, comments, or video ideas you may have. I'm Leslie V, and I'll see you in the next video.